Hello, and welcome to the Walcott House Museum. Sir Derek Walcott was not only a poet and playwright, but also a painter. As a young boy, he, along with his longtime friend Sir Dunstan St. Omer, was under the tutelage of the custodian of St. Lucian heritage, Sir Harold Symonds. Sir Harold was known for his revolutionary thinking with regards to the importance of studying and recording St. Lucian cultural heritage. He was once quoted as saying, "Art in itself could not be called art unless it springs from the people, unless it records these experiences felt and experienced." It was this which inspired Sir Derek to paint. Sir Derek and Sir Dunstan were quoted as saying that they would paint every inch of St. Lucia before they died. Sir Derek explored oil and watercolor painting. In this series, we will learn more about Sir Derek's watercolor works through the eyes of renowned artists.
Derek Walcott had one of the most fascinating techniques that I have seen here in St. Lucia in watercolor paintings. Not exactly an expert in watercolors or in water media, but at the same time, there is something about his work which defines watercolor painting, in that it shows the difference between watercolor media and other media, whether it be oils or pastels. Derek's paintings, as you can see, there's a spontaneity in it. This is what is the essence of watercolor: vitality and spontaneity. And this he has captured expertly. And watercolor has this unique way of having splashes, of having washes, which when used in the right way, gives a vibrance. It brings about a uniqueness to his work. There's that visual aspect of it which is really exotic. And this I like about his work. You can see that from work to work, from piece to piece, there is that symbiotic kind of relationship in terms of the freshness, and like I said, the spontaneity of the work is what really brings about my attention to it. This is what I'm attracted to. And the immediacy, this is the visual complexity which I love about his work.
Walcott had both skills from very early, both the skill of writing as well as the skill of an artist. And he actually contemplated both careers, either as a painter or as a writer. He clearly settled on writing. But for many years, and I think it's true to say most of his life, he actually continued painting, and it was not uncommon to see him wherever he might have been staying in St. Lucia, especially on his sabbaticals, to be painting and writing one or the other every morning or every afternoon. It's an interesting collection that we have here at Walcott House. Many of them are, in fact, pre-Nobel Prize. They're 91 and 92 from what I'm noticing. And you can see in almost all of them some of the predominant themes in Walcott's writing, as well as his recurring imagery in his painting. One of them, I think the most dominant, is the sea. And I think it is a fairly accurate quote that Walcott said, "You cannot separate a Caribbean writer from the sea." The proximity to the sea, the reality of being surrounded by an ocean. And we know that in so many of his works, individual poems as well as entire collection, the sea, the very canvas of the sea comes alive, and he spent a lot of time describing breakers and waves and water and light on water in particular. He hung out a lot in Grosley. He liked that whole ambience. I think one of the things might be where that, you know, being where the land met the ocean, where people had real lives as opposed to artificial postcard existences. And while you will see, say, the tourism reality reflected in the landscape, he was always somewhat distant from it and somewhat wary of that other life. So the people that he tended to paint were actually ordinary, everyday St. Lucians about their business, and you will see that in the paintings accumulated here. The other preoccupation which we see reflected in these canvases here is Walcott's preoccupation with light. He wrote a lot about the way light filtered through trees, how they filtered through casuarinas, through the poirier, which he was always reflecting in his writing. And I think also almost inseparable from his preoccupation with water was the play of light on water, which he writes a lot about. So you will see that also here in these paintings. The landscape, as we know from his writing, was again inseparable from the lives that occurred within the landscape. So Walcott's description is almost a constant canvas of people against landscape, landscape behind people, and his almost spiritual connection with the country which he loved so much and which he chose to feature in his work is richly reflected in all of this, a lot of his writing. I think the only other place that enjoyed that sort of prominence in Walcott's writing was Trinidad, where we know he spent his early years developing the Trinidad Theatre Workshop. But later on in his career, I think there was a spiritual return to St. Lucia, which was beyond his physical relocation here from Boston or from Trinidad. St. Lucia was the place where he was relaxed, where he was comfortable, where he was at his creative best. The other style, or you could even say subject matter, that is very predominant in Walcott's work besides landscapes is the capturing of design elements for his plays and productions. In this particular piece, you are seeing his impression of musicians very much on stage against a set which no doubt related to the production at hand. And what Walcott did in order to communicate with designers, actors, his set builders, and I suspect particularly his costume designers, was to spend many, many hours bringing his visions to life on paper with his watercolors, so that by the time the production was ready to roll, not only was it very clear as to what he had in mind, but it also provided direction for those persons working around him to be able to understand the nature of the character as well as the physical appearance. The last thing I would like to add is that it should not be surprising to anyone that Walcott chose and sort of invested his time and talent in watercolor as opposed to, say, oils or acrylics. Watercolor has the same exacting requirements as a medium as, say, the poetry which he sought to be bound by. The rigor of good poetry is for him, I think, the same as the rigor of good painting. And so the unforgiving nature of watercolors, where every line, every brush stroke, every wash is going to be in evidence, I think he probably enjoyed that discipline as well and caused himself to master it as he did with his writing, master the English language in all its dimensions.
Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the tour. If you liked this video, consider sharing it with your friends. And if you would like to visit, please contact us on 452-3639. Become a member of the St. Lucia National Trust.